everyone, I'm Kelly Jones. I'm back with another healthy eating tip. We have been looking at packaged products a lot, and I want to go back to that today. You may have noticed as you have been looking at some of these packaged products that on the things like bread, cereal, crackers, cookies, cakes, pasta, that sort of thing, that the number one ingredient is some form of enriched flour. This one here is unbleached enriched flour, the crackers. You might also see unbleached enriched wheat flour. So just as a kind of a reference point, 85% of the grains that we consume in the U.S. diet are made with these refined grains. So they are absolutely everywhere. What do I mean by enriched flour? So the grain has three parts to it. It has the bran, which is where the fiber is. It has the sperm with all the nutrition, that's your vitamins and minerals. And it also has the endosperm. That's the portion of the grain that's just basically sugar. So what manufacturers do to break down these grains is they divide them into these different components, but what happens is they skip the bran and the sperm and they just use the endosperm, the sugary portion of the grain. Then what they do for the enriched part of it is they add back in vitamins and minerals. Unfortunately, those are primarily man-made or synthetic type vitamins and minerals that they add in. Another thing that happens in all this processing to get it to that white, fluffy flour product is they have to use some chemicals. Now, one of the chemicals, it does a good job, making the flour with gluten and that sort of thing work really well, but it also creates problems with our thyroid. Another component, it's a bleaching agent. It does its job, but unfortunately has been shown to induce diabetes in mouse models. And the third chemical that gets added in is another bleaching agent, and it's actually the same chemical that's found in a lot of acne products. So there are some potential health issues when you start messing around with nature, right? So we talked about the first one, it being depleted in nutrition and them having to add back in synthetic vitamins and minerals, and then also all the chemical additives and the potential side effects of those. The second thing is, because we're using the sugary portion of the grain, it's going to make our blood sugars go up and increase our body's need for insulin. And when that becomes a problem, they call that metabolic dysfunction. So when you hear that word metabolic, think about metabolism. Metabolism is the process that our body goes through to break down your proteins, your fats, your carbs, those things in whole, real, natural products, breaks it down into usable forms of energy. But when you start adding back in synthetic vitamins and minerals, start using these chemicals to help out make the finished product what they wanted, is it starts to create an imbalance in this whole chemical process of breaking these things down. And when that process is interrupted, it starts to manifest itself in certain health issues. So that's when you'll see things like your blood pressure going up, your blood sugars going up, having abnormal cholesterol or triglyceride levels, and even excess body fat around the middle. So when you take those types of things with your blood pressure, your blood sugars, the body fat, the cholesterol, that sort of thing, and you start clustering them together, it becomes what is known as metabolic syndrome. You may or may not have heard of that term, but metabolic syndrome increases your risk for heart disease, stroke, and type 2 diabetes. The third problematic area with eating all these products with refined grains is that it takes away from our eating whole, real food. We get filled up on the refined flour products, and we don't have room for the more nutritious whole, real food. So as we talked about, refined flour increases the risk for weight gain and obesity, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, hypertension or high blood pressure, and heart disease. It also increases the risk for food addiction, we all know what that's about, acne, cognitive decline, depression, and even cancer. Now there's also one other potentially problematic piece of this puzzle, and that's gluten. Now I know not everybody is sensitive to gluten. If you have celiac disease or are really sensitive, you probably know it because you have a lot of gastrointestinal issues. But there is this thing called non-celiac gluten sensitivity. It doesn't manifest itself in gastrointestinal issues. It manifests itself in things like anemia, fatigue, depression, anxiety, brain fog, eczema, psoriasis, and other skin problems. Now, because we don't typically associate those types of problems with gluten, we never get rid of the source of those issues. And if those types of issues go untreated for a length of time, then it can lead to things like ADHD, ALS, autism, epilepsy, Hashimoto's, MS, osteoporosis, peripheral neuropathy, schizophrenia, and type 1 diabetes. So sometimes you'll hear people talk about going gluten-free, and you may not really understand why, but it could be that they're trying to find out if gluten is causing any type of symptoms in them that are less than desirable, that just aren't making them feel their best. So you can try like a 30-day gluten-free diet, a 60-day gluten-free diet. And the beauty of doing that is that when you add something back in and you start to have unpleasant symptoms, then you can identify that you have a sensitivity to gluten, and maybe it's just that one product, but you can gauge whether you're having any issues with gluten like that. So if you're trying to back off on using some of these refined flours, what are some of the things that you can look at doing? The first thing you could try is potentially finding products that are made with 100% whole grain. Now keep in mind, we can't just walk out into the field and grab a grain and eat it. It has to be broken down to a certain extent. So even 100% whole grain has been processed, but what the good thing is that they'll add back in some of that bran and some of that sperm, so you're getting back the fiber and the nutrition. Unfortunately, it's not all of it. It's still going to be a large component of the sugar portion, but at least it's a step in the right direction. Another potential thing that you can try is sprouted grains. And you may have noticed that there are breads made out of sprouted grains and even some cereals. That would be another step towards getting rid of some of the problematic areas of these grains. If you're really set on bread and you're willing to give it a try sourdough bread. The process of fermenting the bread also gets rid of some of these problems that are presented with these grains. One of the things that I do is I will use quinoa whenever I can instead of a grain, so that I am getting away from the gluten. The other thing is just to completely get away from grains altogether and just really try to focus on whole, real food. Maybe increase the amount of fruit that you're eating. Maybe eat some whole food starches like potatoes, sweet potatoes, squash, those sorts of things, so that you're filling up on whole, real food. Your body knows how to process them, and you're able to get the nutrition from them. So as always, I hope this has been helpful to you. You guys have a great weekend, and we will see you next time.